Cara Mackay, thank you for coming on the call today.
You're absolutely welcome.
Um, would like to ask you, first of all, just introduce the company, tell us a little bit about what you do and how long you've been doing it.
Okay, so my name is Cara Mackay. I am the CEO of Gillies Mackay. We are a timber building company based in Perthshire, which is in Scotland, and we make the best sheds in the world. That's what we do. So we've been doing this for over 30 years now. I'm second generation, and it's my job to make sure that this company lasts for the next generation and the generation after that. So that's pretty much it. Best sheds in the world. I'm the boss.
So no pressure. You've got to keep this family business going.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's it. It's the legacy of the founding fathers, and I've got to make sure that that's maintained and passed on.
So what would you say since you took over, and how long have you been the CEO, first of all?
So I became the managing director in 2016, and then I got my ownership in shares last June. So since June last year, I've been CEO.
So what's been your biggest learning since you've been on the leadership team of this company?
The biggest learning. It's funny, I am writing about that just now. So the biggest lesson, I think, for me is to understand the difference between being liked and respected. So when I started out back in 2016, it was a trying time. Change was obviously on the horizon. I was the boss's daughter. I originally started as a woodcutter when I was about 16. And so, as you can imagine, for some of the legacy staff, to see me grow up within the company to then become their boss, change was maybe not the way that they would want it or the way that they wanted to accept it. So it was a very trying time. And what I was exposed to at that time was a deep loneliness in my leadership. So not having people understand me, to not be heard the way that I was trying to convey myself, and to not have the support or trust of the staff at that time. And that was really difficult. It was really emotional at times as well, just the dread and the hopelessness, and also the feeling of being trapped, because obviously my only job is to ensure the longevity of this company. That was my responsibility. Nobody else is responsible for that apart from me. So to be in that position and to have to fight every day to try and get people on board and on my side, to ensure that the growth of the company would happen, to be able to pay for everybody that was in it, and to be able to grow in terms of our size and in terms of our just the whole sustainability of it all, in a seasonal business, that in a market that was tight, and for a product that's very complex and hard to do. So all of that was the biggest sort of learning term for me. So that started in sort of 2016, and now we come up to 2023 that we're in just now, and the landscape of our organization and the culture within it is a completely different experience altogether. So I have the buy-in, I have the support from the legacy staff. In fact, the most difficult one in 2016, I appointed as my operations director last year. So the relationships have been built upon, and I have gained that respect. And it was understanding the difference of not being their friend. That's not what my job was. And it never will be. I'm not here to be their friend. I'm here to lead them. And in order to do that, I have to gain their respect. And I feel like that's what I have achieved thus far. But I do appreciate that It's an ever evolving thing. And this is a moment in time. And as quickly as you feel that you have it, you could also lose it. And it's to be making sure that you're not complacent in that, and that you stay true, obviously, to the values and the commitment that you have said that you would, and that you honor it.
So the trust and support that you've worked hard to earn, you now have to continue to keep and maintain.
Exactly.
And that comes with its own challenges?
Yes, of course. The challenge of being a leader is exhausting. I'm not going to lie, it is. And to turn up every day and be the support and strength that everybody else needs, you know, it is a case of leaders eat last. That's who I am, and supporting all of them is my sole responsibility, because in turn my support to them is what they put out in terms of the productivity that they offer for the business. Their performance is a reflection on how well I've treated them and supported them. So yeah, it is a challenge daily.
So we've talked about, you know, the qualities that you need as a leader of the company. What qualities do you look for in your team, and how do you foster a positive and productive work environment?
So I'm huge on that. That's probably my most exciting part of my role, is to see how well these boys develop, specifically in the operations department. So we have hired 3 times the amount of staff that we originally had within my time of managing this company. And the nature of that started almost organically. It wasn't intended, but we were hiring unskilled young workers. And what we would do is we would train them within their specific role, and they would shadow a senior for a certain amount of time. And that seemed to work really well, because I'd hired and fired a lot of people over the years that have come from skilled backgrounds, have all their trade tickets and what have you, but couldn't unlearn their experiences in order to relearn how it's done here. And so their process was always quite up and down. And with the younger workforce, what I found is that their rate of development, their rate of learning is exponential in comparison to someone who has already learned elsewhere. And so we kept doing that. So now we have, what have we got? We've got our juniors who are 3 years in, and then we've got our trainees who are within their first year. So our junior joiners are exceptional. They are phenomenal in their positions right now. One of them is going for a supervisory promotion. So he's been put forward for that, and he's only been here for 3 years. And he's, how old is Aaron? He's 23. So that, to me, explains everything about what we do here. We've got the young trainees looking up to the juniors, and the juniors are able to instruct and develop on these trainees. So they're passing on their skill set. So it's the zero proximal development stage. They've just learned it, the juniors, and now they're passing it on to the trainees. And all of that fulfillment, all of that aspiration that's building inside of these boys, some that come from harsh backgrounds, no qualifications, I've most definitely had a chase from the police at some point. Like, they're coming from these places where they've been told that they're good at nothing, to now be identifying as this skilled tradesman and able to produce these really expensive, beautiful timber buildings. And if you can imagine what that could do for somebody's self sort of fulfillment, to see where they are at the stage of their their young years. Like we have the trainees at the moment, they range from 16 up to 18. So, you know, they're at the very, very early stages of their careers, and the development and the nurturing that we put into them as the seniors. So we have our senior legacy team staff, and they're the original trainers. And if you can, like, the whole concept of it, to be able to pass skills on, physical skills that you can see yourself getting better at, that in itself is so tangible to them. And it is a direct reflection of the type of company that we are. So it creates this culture of family, of nurture, of caring for one another. And that is the type of workforce that I have. The loyalty and the dedication that I get from them is unmeasurable. They're an absolute credit to me, the business, and they are what will push us forward into where we're wanting to go next and how we're going to grow.
That's amazing, Cara. And if business owners and business leaders are watching this and they don't take something from that, then nobody will, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's brilliant. So just on the thought about where you're going next, like what are your aspirations for the company for the next 5 years?
So at the moment, what we're doing is we are at a stage where we've put in a ton of investment into the company. So we have hired multiple staff, and we have rebuilt our infrastructure in terms of like extending our premises and extending and increasing what capacity in terms of how many buildings that we can make. So that's done. We've done the foundations, and now what we're doing is we're building upon that. So we have to increase our capacity by 1.5 by 2025, which will then increase our profit turnover by double. And that's the next stage of what we're doing in terms of operations in a practical sense. That's the way that the business is going forward. But when we're talking about the not so tangible elements of it, is what does that then do for us in the future for Gillies Mackay, is that we are creating a blueprint of this company. Every department that we have, we've got operations in terms of the workshop, and then we've got operations in terms of on-site. So we manufacture, sell, and assemble all our own buildings. So we blueprint all of these departments, and then we can create a franchise of the company in terms of being able to then open elsewhere. And that's the whole point of this. This is why I'm investing so heavily in our practices and our processes. In April, literally next week, I will receive funding for a smart grant application in Scotland. That's when you're doing something technically innovative within your organisation. And we're developing a software, me and my brother. So my family on the other side, they come from a computer programming background. So we're creating a software for our systems operations. So all the scheduling, everybody's jobs, I organise it all. And that is actually quite detrimental to the company because it's all in my head. So over the past 2 years, I've refined this manual digital process to a point where I now can create an actual software that does it for me. So within that in itself, that's a diversification within our organisation, because obviously we'll create this tool that will help Gillies Mackay, but when we've created that tool, that itself becomes sellable to the construction and manufacturing industry. So part of the legacy of Gillies Mackay is that we were a family business, and we're built through all of our own beings of a family. That's the whole point of our unit. Because of the ownership and the way that the share structure is, we have Natty Shed Life, which is our holding company. And we are going to use Natty Shed Life as an investment company for all of our families. So anyone that has any viable entrepreneurial plan, any one of my children, any one of our grandchildren going forward, any Gillies or Mackay, or anybody that's in our company who wants to start up something themselves that doesn't have to do anything with sheds, we will invest, and we'll do that through our holding company. So this software is like a test pilot for that type of structure. So that is the future of G&M. Yes, we're going to sell sheds to the world. Yes, they are the best in the world, but also we have other ways of doing this. And ultimately, it's the core sort of culture within the company that we want to repeat.
Amazing. I'm not. I don't normally take a lot of notes during these interviews, but I can't stop writing. I mean, this is absolutely brilliant. Okay, so last question before we start to wrap up, Cara, would be, what would you say to anyone thinking of going into business for themselves based on your experience in running this company?
Yeah. Gosh.
It can only be one thing.
I think ultimately anyone that's willing to step outside of their comfort zone and tread to a point where they can't quite touch the bottom. I think if you're willing to do that, then recognize that that in itself is a strength, and to be kind to yourself throughout the process, because it's so hard, and it's, as I said at the start, lonely. So be kind to yourself when you're doing it.
Okay, well, actually, I do have one more question then, because that did lead me to one more question. We do have 30 more seconds. How do you balance your personal life and your happiness with the demands of running a business?
I have a bloody good husband. That's how you do it. You need support. You need the support at home. You have to have it. Somebody that loves you unconditionally and can support you through the trials that you will go through.
So get an understanding husband.
100%.
Brilliant. Cara Mackay of Gillies Mackay, thank you so much for your time today. This has been a very, very informative and very useful.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been a nice therapy session.
They are therapy sessions, definitely. Thanks again, Cara.
You too.